Shalom, Chavrim. I'm Stephen, and you're watching Israeli News Live. This morning, we got two EU jets that have collided over northern Germany. There, looks like I don't know. It looks like either the Swedish language or Danish language, something like that. There, I'm not really sure myself. Tweeted that this morning. And of course, the first news to pick it up is Sputnik. Two Eurofighters crash into each other in northern Germany. One of the pilots were killed, according to what is being reported. Media outlets have reported that the pilots were able to safely eject, but the crash has started a forest fire in the area. Rescue service troops have arrived at the site of the incidents. According to the German newspaper Die Welt, two warplanes belonging to the German armed forces have crashed into one another during military drills near the Flesnitz in north of the country. The third jet engaged in the exercise avoided the collision and reported the incident. The aircraft reportedly belonging to the Tactical Air Force Wing 73 Steinhoff. And of course, you can check out the rest of the article. We'll post it a little bit here and just a little bit for you there. Also, Russia is saying that once the crisis in Georgia can be brought under control there, they continue to roar out of control there through protests, etc., that Russia will resume its flights to Georgia. But it's just not, it doesn't seem it's going to calm down anytime soon. One other quick thing I just want to bring out real quick, and it will be coming into a broadcast later this evening, but the Arab News is reporting this guy here, Dr. Mohammed Al-Sulami, talking about, well, let me just put it kind of simple. Seems like the guy's a cheerleader for John Bolton. That's what I think. The Saudis are like cheerleaders for John Bolton. The aircraft carrier John C. Stennis in the Straits of Hormuz. AP photo he put up there. I don't think it means it's there right now, but anyway, he's writing about the a possible war on Iran. It says the Arabian Gulf and the broader Middle East have witnessed a continuous escalation of tensions over the past 2 months, with increasing U.S. and U.K. military mobilization in the region. That's an interesting point. Both UK and the U.S. are continually mobilizing their militaries there. As well as counter accusations between U.S. and Iran have led some experts to forecast the outbreak of conflict, especially after Iran last week downed a U.S. drone it claimed had entered its airspace. The U.S. asserted, however, that the drone was shot down over international waters. Now, I find that interesting. You know, the only thing that Iran has done thus far in that region is shot down this American drone. All these other acts that they have blamed on Iran were done by the little ISIS thugs that the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and the Mossad group have been training to carry out these acts in the Persian Gulf region. And that's what they're using to try to get this war going. He does say on here, experts believe that through the Iranian regime's operations targeting commercial shipping in Gulf waters, false, and Iran-affiliated Houthi militias' resumption of attacks on economic civilian targets inside Saudi Arabia, the leadership in Iran seeks to force the U.S. into a small-scale conflict. Small-scale conflict, really. The fundamental question is, why would Iran want to engage in an armed conflict with the U.S., particularly when it is certain that there is no balance or similarity between their respective military firepower? Well, Iran doesn't want to have that kind of war. Wow. You know, I got a comment and noticed there the other day on one of the videos there we did about the situation with Iran. And the guy says on there, no doubt a good brother, he says, Steve, he says, why would you want to support Iran who wants to behead people? One, I don't really support Iran, but the thing is, if you want to talk about people that want to behead people, all you have to do is take a look at the Noahide laws that is being really pushed by a lot of extreme Talmudists and even in some so-called Messianic circles, that according to the Noahide laws, and now is being publicly pushed, that they consider capital punishment by beheading for any of those that violate these Noahide laws. Not just the law of idolatry. If you were to take and believe that Jesus Christ is the divine Son of God, which is capital punishment according to the Noahide laws, but any of those laws are decapitation is the means of enforcing those laws. And not to mention Saudi Arabia. The very cheerleaders for John Bolton there, that guy right there, he's a cheerleader for John Bolton. Oh my gosh. Yeah, they decapitate people publicly. Even it doesn't matter if they're a teenager or not, a kid, whatever, cut their head off. Oh, geez. So, yeah, Iran may do the same. I don't say that they don't, but the whole point is why do we need a war in the first place? I've already given you guys all the evidence that you needed to show you that all these attacks that are going on in the Persian Gulf aren't done by Iran in the first place. First thing Iran has done was shoot down an American drone that they claim was over their territory. I'm sure it's pretty close to a disputed territorial area, but for Iran to be able to pick up the fragments of it and the U.S. not to be able to pick it up, not to say the U.S. didn't pick up their own fragments as well, but that kind of tells you that this drone went down in both sides of the territory, so maybe it's a question of debate over who's right, who's wrong. Any case, why do we need to go to war with Iran in the first place? Everybody says, well, they're threatening Israel. Israel's got more than the ability to take out the entire country of Iran with a few nukes. Don't kid yourself. That doesn't mean that we have to go to war with Iran just because all these back and forth rhetoric. And I don't think Iran would be threatening Israel right now if we weren't trying to blow up the entire Middle East. Not to say that Iran is threatening Israel at this point right now, other than the fact Israel has bombed Iranian targets over 200 times just last year inside of Syria, when Iran is there with Russia trying to help the Syrian government overcome the problems. I think we ought to think about those things sometimes. We get carried away with just, we got to be the cheerleader for the Israeli leader right now that has turned the entire nation that's supposed to be a religious nation into a sodomite city. Not just a Sodom city. Somebody brought this up to me. I think it was my wife that said this to me. If you think about the part about Egypt, why does the book of Revelation say when the two witnesses are killed, their bodies will lay in the great city that is called spiritually Sodom and Egypt? Well, I always knew it was Sodom. Why Sodom? Because, Tel Aviv is the sodomite capital of the world, by the way. I think that's some new statistics on that. But also, Egypt, that was one that I had different thoughts on that, but I think it's my wife that said to me, think about it. What they do in Egypt. Or maybe it's somebody else sent it to me. I forget now. So think about it. Why Egypt? Egypt represents spiritual slavery. And you could look at that all kinds of ways. They want to put believers in Yeshua back under Talmudic authorities. This is what Shapira and others are pushing right now, putting all those Christian believers underneath Talmudic authorities in Israel. Put them under that spiritual bondage. Or we could translate that out another way, slavery, right? The slavery of Egypt, putting the Palestinians in slavery. We could go all kinds of ways. I'll tell you what. The one thing that Moses told us when we were coming to this beautiful land called Israel, I'm talking about 3,500 years ago. I'm not talking about in modern times. We first had to drive out the occupants because why? They were Nephilim. They were mixed with a fallen angel race. That's how they had giants among them. The Levites did the exact same thing. They mixed into the Nephilim clan as well when they were in Babylon. This is why you see Jesus talking about their reptilians, serpents, vipers. In the Hebrew, Matthew even calls them crocodiles. obviously reptilian. Doesn't mean that every Levite was mixed this way, but many of them did. We know what the story with Ezra says. But at any rate, Moses told us that when we go into the land, don't oppress people. And in modern times, this is supposed to be the time we come back during the Messianic age. This is supposed to be the time that not the Messiah comes, but for those that know who the Messiah really is, it's an awakening of the remnant of Israel to actually know that Jesus Christ was indeed their Messiah. And you would think that believers, especially Christians, would remember that Moses commanded Israel not to oppress people because we were oppressed at one time. But I am so surprised at how many people are willing to see Palestinians oppressed, deprived of basic humanitarian rights. And sometimes people can, they might argue, well, if you knew what the Israelis go through because of terrorism from Palestinians, you might better understand why they feel the way they do, Steve. I do know what they go through. I lived in Israel during the Second Intifada. I went through a suicide bombing. I know very much what Israelis go through. And even then, I knew about how that IDF soldiers, in fact, one who is a roommate of mine, shared with me about how they target practiced on Palestinians. And then we get people like Iran Efrati who share with the world, one of many Israeli soldiers that have come out and spoken publicly. And that's a very hard thing for them to do in Israel, spoken publicly about what they go through. If you just look on Twitter, for example, you can see all kinds of things that happen to these people. And then wonder why these people react the way they do. If we would treat the Palestinians the way Moses said to do it, we would have a lot less problems in Israel today. If we would treat our neighbors as ourselves, as Jesus commanded, there would be no war with Syria. I'm not saying that all these other nations are some angels of hope or something, but Syria, with all the nations in the Middle East, Syria was one that was more tolerant. They were more of a democratic type of nation. Christians, Muslims, and Jews all able to live in Syria together until the coalition of America and Europe and Saudi Arabia and Israel, all of them decided to overthrow this nation. Now Iran's on the chopping block. But don't forget, General Wesley Clark told us this was all going to happen, so we shouldn't be a bit surprised that they're going to attack Iran. My question is to you, what do you think is going to happen to our soldiers that are in the Middle East? I know Iran's a small country, but just remember, it'll stir up a hornet's nest. And ultimately, it may even affect us here at home. Maybe not hugely, but if there ends up being an EMP attack or something like that, life as we know it will be over. Now, if you're like me, you were raised in the country, raised to where you could live without electricity and water and all that kind of good stuff, it won't be too bad. For most Americans, it could be a total catastrophe. But also keep in mind, just from the sources that I do have, that's something that is strategically planned for this nation. I'm Stephen Benoon. Didn't really mean to get into all that. I don't know why I did, but I did. Anyway, our shalom in a world of ain't shalom.